Hey, everybody. Welcome back to But I Did It. I'm your host, Lachey, and today we're diving into what real transformation looks like and how shifting your consciousness can change everything. My guest, Juliana Salon, is a hypnotherapist who helps people heal at the subconscious level. Juliana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lachey. It's so great to be here. Really, I'm delighted to get to spend time chatting with you today.
Yes, me as well. And so I am so glad that you have reached out to me. I really wanted to start kind of at the beginning. Like, what brought you into therapist, and just take us to the beginning of your journey and how you ended up here.
Absolutely. It's a long and winding road in some ways. I, in many ways, have really been interested in consciousness, in kind of understanding the magic of what it is to be human and what it is to be here in our mind and body, capable of healing and creativity and all of these different things from a really young age. And I remember some very vivid meditative experiences when I was a kid that I had kind of blocked out of my memory until I started much more rigorous meditation practice in my 20s. And, at that point, I'd gotten interested and really involved in Buddhist meditation. So that was one
Um,
of my first kind of dips into. I had had other experiences like that as a teen that I was really interested in,
mhm.
got away from that, came back to it, really actually following a trauma in my life that put into perspective the ways that this life is short, and
Mhm.
if we're not living in a way that's really in alignment with who we are, what we really want, what we need, what we believe in, it's amazing the way that things can get off track, and the way that sometimes difficult circumstances sort of forces us back on our path. So I dove really deep into meditation. I'm also a meditation teacher, so I teach a lot of classes, retreats, different things like that for people who are interested in exploring meditation. The hypnotherapy piece came in a little bit later. I had been having very powerful experiences during silent meditation retreats. And
Really?
so, whenever I was able to take some time off of work, I would go and spend time in silent retreat. It was really, if I wasn't at work and in my normal life, I was probably on a retreat for many, many years. And I started to have these very visceral, energetic, visionary kind of experiences during meditation. And I wanted to understand more of what was going on.
So can you give
So,
an
yeah,
example
go
of
on.
one, say one that like really stuck with you, or one that you just
Absolutely.
great memory of?
Yeah. There are so many different experiences, and they're subtle and a little magical, so sometimes it's hard to describe, and sometimes actually they would come in really wild synchronicities. There was one retreat that I was on where there was someone in my life, a colleague that I had really struggled with. And they had caused a lot of pain and a lot of harm, to me personally. And part of my practice during that meditation retreat was really, almost this kind of deep prayer going on for days of just, can I let go of the wounding? Can I let go of the pain from that experience? And, lo and behold, this
Mhm.
person was also involved in the meditation community. And
Wow.
I
Okay.
kid you not, this is a closed retreat center environment. There is no one else from the public allowed in or out. This person was not on the retreat. And what happened was one day, in the midst of this very kind of deep transformative moment of
Mhm.
wanting to let go of what had been holding me back in terms of my own pain in regards to this relationship, I stepped outside,
Oh.
and all of a sudden, this person comes walking right up the hill. They're
Uh-huh.
right there in the flesh, and the amazing thing that happened to me was actually that all of the hurt, all of the resentment, all of the kind of bitter feelings, they just faded right into the distance, and I was in that moment overcome with a real sense of compassion and care for that person, even though they had behaved in ways that had been very challenging.
Mhm.
And it really, to me, was one of these kind of magical experiences that can happen when you're very sincere in your intention and you are moving through life in this way that almost feels like a prayer for healing and for growth and for change,
Yeah.
that the lived experiences and the experience in meditation can actually kind of coalesce and collaborate together, which I just thought was a really fascinating experience. And, it really got me thinking even more than I already had been about the power of our minds, the power
Mhm.
of our intention, the power of a sincere wish to heal. And so from that point, I started exploring hypnosis. I had the really good fortune of working with an amazing teacher and mentor. Her name's Isa Gucciardi, and she teaches a modality called depth hypnosis, which is actually a combination of hypnosis,
Uh-huh.
Buddhism, shamanic healing. It's really a
I
very
was just
cool, very
yeah.
fascinating modality, and I gotta say it supercharged my own healing process, and over time, as I just for my own happiness and well-being, went deeper and deeper into that, I realized, "Oh, this is actually something I really wanna offer to other people." So, it was a
So
gradual
yeah.
process over time.
What makes it different from that traditional hypnotherapy?
That's a great question. And I do these days do a little bit of both. I work with
Okay.
people with depth hypnosis. I also do traditional hypnotherapy and a modality that's more like coaching for the unconscious mind, where you're going in a little bit lighter, but you're really working on creating neuroplasticity in the brain and creating new ways of seeing, new ways of being, new ways of reacting to situations. I would say the big difference in terms of depth hypnosis,
Mhm.
and that's DEPTH. Sometimes people mishear it and say death. The really interesting thing about that modality is that it's really designed to go deep into the root of the places where there's been suffering, the places where there's been pain, those places where we just feel like, I cannot get unstuck. And
Mhm.
so with depth hypnosis, we're really investigating what are the experiences in childhood? What are the energetic things that we've taken on from our family or our culture? And how can we start to release them? Because I've heard you talk about this before, that
Yeah.
understanding that, we're constantly exchanging energy with people. And
Right.
so, of course, sometimes we need to clean that up a little bit.
And so you said it kind of gets you get into the place of where you're realizing this is where I'm stuck, because you can only do so much work. But if you're not digging deep and finding out those traumas that you're subconsciously not exploring, because we get to a point where we don't even realize that we're blacking out certain things and that we don't want to think about it. We don't bring it up. And after doing that for so many years of constantly building this layer over, like you said, suffering, trauma, depression, whatever it may be, your body and your mind tends to believe that because your mind will believe whatever you tell it. And so you're constantly saying it's not there, it's not there. And so your mind starts to believe that, but in reality, it's there. And so what you're saying with depth hypnosis, that's where you're going in deep. You're doing that work, you're pulling up all those layers and you're saying, no, we're gonna figure out what's underneath all of that, those layers that you piled on.
Absolutely. And, I love the way that you're naming this because part of my experience, at least, is most of the people who come to me to do this work, it's because they say, I've already done therapy.
Hmm.
I've talked about it a lot. I have a good sense of self-awareness
Right.
around where have things been difficult? What are my patterns that cause me pain? Where are the places where things aren't really going right? But the
Mhm.
common thing that every person I seem to work with has in common is each one of them say, therapy and coaching and, inner work in these different modalities, it's gotten me kind of this far. And
Right.
I need something that's going to take me a little bit deeper, a little bit farther, get to
Mm,
another layer because I know there's more. I know that there's more healing that can be done. I know that there's more wisdom that can be there and more insight. And so we really try to go for, can we get the most insight? Can we get the biggest
right.
energetic shift and the most understanding of ourselves? And, part of why it's really effective in this modality is that we're going beyond the conscious mind. You know, we're getting out of our own way. We're going into a
Mhm.
lightly altered trance. And this is one of the things actually that people can get a little confused with hypnosis about.
Oh,
The kind of big myth about hypnosis is that I'm going to go so deep. I'm going to be out of control. I'm going to just be, kind of the hypnotherapist takes over my
right.
mind and I let go completely. We're not doing that. You're not gonna
Okay.
cluck like a chicken.
Yes.
What we're
I mean,
really
because
doing.
it is a scary thought to think of I will be
Yeah,
going to a place where I won't be able to control my own thoughts and actions, and now I'm gonna be mind controlled. So it's like, you think of it, it's like, "No, actually, I don't want to do that." And so it can kind of, deter people from wanting to get that kind of therapy.
yeah. I would say it's like the number one thing that people feel nervous about, and it's also
Mhm.
the number one misconception because what we're really doing actually, it's an interactive process. When I'm working with someone, we're going into a trance, but it's the sort of trance where it feels almost like being in two worlds at once. You could
Right.
know you're in your house, you could hear somebody call you on the phone or ring the doorbell, or if the smoke detector went off, you'd be able to get up and go deal with it. But you would also be able to drop into this more dreamy, more intuitive, more creative state that we
Okay.
can't access when we're just kind of going about our day to day life. The
Right.
truth is, we're going into trance all the time now. When you get lost in the plot of a movie or a book, that's a type
Mhm.
of trance. When you're in flow and you're creating art, that's also a type of trance. So, what we're really doing is we're taking that kind of trance state and we're saying, what can we do with this that helps you heal?
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that. I think I was just talking to actually a friend of mine about that, about how the things we watched, read, just what we use to entertain ourselves to kind of get through the day really has so much more of a deeper meaning and interaction than we tend to realize and that we give energy to, because you think about it, and like you said, you kind of go into this space where you're watching this movie and you become part of it. For a moment, you're really in that world. And so we really have to be mindful of the things that we let
Yes.
our subconscious minds explore, and the things that we feed into our minds, because then we'll watch it and we'll say, "Okay, I'm done. The movie was over. It was great." But then you go and you go about your day, or you say you go to end your night, you're laying down, and it's still there in the back of your mind. And now you're still in that world and you're still carrying that energy.
It's so true. Yes, you just channeled one of the big teachings of the Buddha. Believe it or
Yeah.
not, that part of what's really important is that we actually take care of what's coming in through our senses. So what we're seeing, what
Yes.
we're hearing, all of these different things that we're consuming, because it absolutely impacts us. I know over the years, the more I meditate, the more I do the hypnotherapy work, the more deeply I connect to myself, the
Mhm.
more sensitive I am to, violent movies and TV and things like that. I really actually
Right.
won't do it anymore. I'm very selective in what I watch because there is a really significant and real energetic impact, but
Yes.
most of us are kind of numb to it. I certainly
Exactly.
was when I was younger, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, as I'm getting older, I'm getting more aware, subconsciously aware, emotionally aware, understanding that I don't like it. It does not entertain me in a way that it used to. So I used to love scary movies, honestly.
I did too.
Yes, it was just my favorite thing. Grab a blanket, the popcorn, and cut up. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna watch this scary movie, and I'm sitting there, scared out of my mind. But it was the emotions and the feelings, it was good, it was fun. But now to go back and, watch those same movies, I can't do it anymore. I can't watch scary movies. And I kind of had to, tell this to a family member just recently because they're like, oh, this new movie is coming out, we want to go to the theater, we're all gonna go together and go watch it. I'm like, I can't. I don't I it carries with me, that
Yeah,
energy. And I
absolutely.
can't seem to, wash it out as I used to be able to. I will kind of go and see and be able to, okay, kind of forget about it. But things now, everything, like you said, what I'm consuming sticks with me so much more. I think, like you said, it's just the intentionality of what I want to be on my subconscious, what I want to be at the forefront of my mind. And so I'm learning to, you know what, I believe it's a Bible verse and it says, but what oh gosh, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically what you want to think about and what you want to be, that's what you should keep on your mind. And those are the
Yes.
things that you should meditate, like you said, meditate on day and night, and that you should keep in front of you. And so as I'm learning this, I'm definitely trying to pass that over to my children as well. Like, hey, let's, watch the certain things that we are watching. Let's be aware of what we're reading. Let's be even, like you said, interactions, that energy of who we're conversating with and what we're conversating about, because not everything is as innocent as it seems. And I think the earlier we learn that, the better, because then we're able to take that throughout life and just be aware. Um,
Absolutely,
that's so true.
absolutely. And, it's really cool that this is what you're tapping into right now in this conversation because it's actually a really big part of hypnotherapy. Because, when I'm working with someone, part of what we're doing is we're touching in briefly to, the stuck place, the pain, the difficult pattern or the habit that wants to change. But
Yes.
then what we're doing is we're actually making a shift and we're bringing in resources and power and a sense of agency that the person maybe didn't have when they were younger and that pattern was just getting started. And so, what we're
Mhm.
actually doing is we're bringing a new kind of knowing, a new kind of learning, a new kind of embodied state into the experience where somebody had previously felt scared or stuck or confused, so that it
Mhm.
actually changes the way that the mind relates to the experience. So, like, one example of this would be, to keep it simple, say you have a fear of public speaking. I work with a lot of people who get nervous, as many of us do, right? So, part of what often in this work we'll do is okay, you touch in for a moment to the fear. You notice where it lives in the body. Maybe you notice there's certain thoughts that come with it. But then what we're doing is we're shifting away from that.
Okay.
And then this is more in the kind of integrative model of more traditional hypnosis. We're shifting away from that and we're actually allowing ourselves to fully embody and imagine and get creative and sort of playful and luxuriate in, okay, how would it feel
Mhm.
if I was public speaking and it felt amazing? If I felt confident and I could look out there and I could see that I was getting my point across and I just felt good. And so we're actually in this trance state, we're embodying and we're feeling and we're imagining that different type of experience. And then over
Mhm.
time, we're mapping it back onto, okay, now you're standing in front of that crowd. What does it
Okay.
feel like now? And over time, and sometimes it takes a minute because
Indeed.
we're rewiring really, really well-worn neural pathways, right? But over time, all of a sudden, the charge that's there, the trigger that's there, the feeling of like, "Oh god, this is gonna be so scary," it starts to get less and less and less. And all of a sudden, for a lot of people, what opens up is like, maybe this could actually be fun. Or
Right.
maybe I could just feel powerful and confident, or maybe I could just be right there resting in the intention that what I have to say matters.
Yeah.
Part of what I love about this work actually is that it helps people build confidence and build trust in themselves, which really, when we can trust ourselves, the capacity for healing and resilience, I think it kind of, I don't know, increases tenfold.
Yeah.
So that's something that feels really important.
Yeah, Jenna, I love the way you just broke that down because that really helped me understand, like you said, shifting your consciousness. It's really that rewiring, going over consistently with that new thought, that new mindset. But it's not just thinking it, you have to vision it. You have to really be able to see yourself in that moment, in that confidence and understand that it can be a reality. And I think that's the way you just broke it down, it was great because it helped me to kind of make a visual point of it. I'm a visual learner. I like to be able to see things. And so visually you just created this understanding for me. And so it was great because
I'm
as
so
you're
glad.
explaining it, I'm able to, understand and follow along with you that okay, it's one thing to tell yourself something over and over. I'm I'm smart, I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm whatever you want to, make yourself believe. But it's another thing to actually see yourself in that light, to actually vision yourself standing in front of a crowd, to actually, see yourself, like you said, saying a speech or giving words that actually are meaningful and watching people to receive that, accept it, and walk away with what you were there to deliver. And so that is great. That is a great breakdown of shifting your consciousness.
I'm so glad that that was helpful. It really is. There's something about embodying the feeling or the state of mind that you would really like to most embody that it makes a really big difference. One of the people that I think about when I think about this work and the moments that I have felt just so glad to be doing what I'm doing is one person that I worked with who was actually really going through an intense medical issue. They were newly diagnosed with something that potentially could be just life altering and eventually become a terminal illness. I work with a lot of people with chronic illness, and part of that is around you can alleviate a lot of symptoms with hypnosis, but you can also manage the fear, the grief, the overwhelm, and having to deal with a medical system that has limitations, can be frustrating. And I just remember part of what this person came to me about was, they knew that they could handle in some ways what came next, but they felt terrified. They were
Mhm.
so scared. And the fear was getting in the way of their ability to really make the most of their life at this time that, even if this diagnosis happened, the worst of it would be years down the road.
Yes.
And so they felt like they were stuck in this really painful state of kind of frozen in fear. And so what we were able to do was move out of the fear and into
Mhm.
a space of being able to remember and embody actually this person has had incredible courage. They've gone on wild adventures, they're someone who actually, they're an outdoor adventurer, and so they have had, potentially life-threatening experiences out rock
Mhm.
climbing, out camping, out hiking long, long
Yeah.
distances. And so what they were able to encounter actually was this deep and embodied knowing and memory of the fact that they have so much resilience and so much courage, even in the face of this fear. And there was something about remembering that and embodying it rather than just talking about it that
Mhm.
shifted things in really dramatic ways. They're still living with the possibility that their health could deteriorate at some point in the future, but instead of it being completely destabilizing and terrifying, they're living their life to the fullest and pursuing passion projects and doing things that really matter for them. And, that feels like a real gift to be able to help someone get to a place where they're not feeling paralyzed by fear. That can be such a hard place to be in. And I think we've all been there in some way, shape, or fear
Definitely.
where things just feel terrifying. And in those moments, relief matters. Relief really matters.
So, Juliana, when did you realize helping others heal was your calling?
It's a great question. In some ways, it's always been kind of top of mind. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 2, which is a personality type called the helper.
Okay.
And so kind of hard baked into my personality has been a desire to support other people. I was, even as a little kid, the person that friends would come to when things were difficult and ask for support and find ways to help. So it's always been sort of part of my disposition. But my original career actually was not in healing work. I was helping in a different way. I was working in the nonprofit sector. And so I was working as a fundraiser primarily for human rights organizations and
Okay.
a really, really long-term work with a really great organization that helps support students who are the first in their family to go to college. So a big, big part of my life was helping people pursue their dreams of education and the careers that they wanted and,
Yeah.
breaking generational cycles around that.
Wow. So it's just always been natural for you. That's so crazy because you said you used to work for a nonprofit. I currently work for a nonprofit as well, and I just love, the work that goes into it, working and knowing that what I'm doing is gonna help make a difference in someone's life and, being for the community. And so, yeah, I think that's really great. Wanted to touch on the spirituality in psychology. And so I know you talked a little bit about Buddhism and then but also hypnotherapy. And so the bridging between that, like one thing I love about your work is how you bridge the spiritual with the psychological in such an integrated way. So what does it look like in a practice? Like, can you go a little bit more into that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit different for different people. The thing that I like about this work is that you can work with somebody who is deeply spiritual, and that's a huge part of their identity. And you can also work with someone who that is completely not on their radar. There's a door open for everybody to have experiences of connecting to something that's bigger than themselves. And
Yes.
some people may think about that as, spirit or the universe or God. And some people may just feel like, wow, gosh, I feel a lot better. I feel more expansive. I feel a lot of relief. So I appreciate that there's sort of an accessibility to it. Although that said, my background very much does have this spiritual orientation. I've been investigating spiritual practice since I was a teen. And so I've got close to 30 years into
Okay.
that now, actually. So many of the ways that that sort of interplays really is, one is in a lot of the hypnotherapeutic work, especially depth hypnosis. Part of what we're doing is we're connecting with what I'll often call a guide. And this is a part of ourself that has our greatest good at heart, but it also can be considered, an aspect of the universe or an aspect of kind of this field of love and compassion that is
Hmm.
accessible to us as humans. And so with that as an entry point, almost guaranteed that you're going to have some kind of a spiritual feeling experience. You know, um,
Hmm.
there's almost no way around it that we can touch into, these deep qualities of love and expansion and possibility and compassion and this sort of benevolence and not feel like we're connected to something bigger and deeper and wiser than our everyday, answering emails, scrolling through our phone self. And there's something that happens with that in and of itself that provides an incredible sense of relief. There's something about having some kind of a spiritual practice, and whatever that is, that might be prayer, that might be meditation, that might be yoga, that might be energy work. Everybody's different. But there's something about having a connection to spirituality that is inherently very grounding and very resourcing, and allows us to make meaning and find purpose in a deeper way. So that tends to be a guiding light for me, even if we're not really talking about it.
I feel like I have follow-up questions and how different topics I kind of want to guide in, but you just flow right into it. That was going to be one of my next questions is, well, how do you keep this work grounded? Like, how do you stay grounded within doing, such a healing work? Because sometimes when you're working with so many different energies, you start to, you know, um, pick up those energies and it can easily transfer you. Like we said, energies transfer. So transfer onto you. And so that was going to be one of my questions about how do
Yeah.
you stay so grounded in a world of just constantly trying to help others?
This is such an amazing question. You really are you're such a natural in terms of following that intuition of where to go, and this is a real treat. They're actually in the work that I do, we are trained in some techniques for when we're working with people to actually not pick up on their energy. We have training, especially in the depth hypnosis model, to actually be able to lean back into our own connection with wisdom and guidance, and to be able to really trust that, that person, they innately have the capacity to heal. They have everything that they need. And we're here to hold a container and guide, but we don't have to force anything. And there's something in being able to trust that and lean back and provide the support without feeling like we have to be creating this intense energetic bridge that
Yes.
not only does it help the practitioner, but it actually helps the client because instead of it feeling like I'm here doing something to or for them, they
Mm-hmm.
know that it's all about them. They're becoming the healer. They are the one that is making the change. And that's also really empowering. So I would say that's a really big part of it. Finding these ways to actually give people their power back and let go of attachment
Yes.
to, however I think it should go or I want it to go for a person. They actually know best. Their system, their nervous system, their mind, their heart, their spirit, it really knows what to do. And I
Mhm.
think that's really trustworthy. So that's one part of it that I find to be really, really helpful in staying grounded. For me personally, I also do find that it is really important to also have other aspects of life that feel joyful and supportive and fun that
Okay.
can just be for my own enjoyment. So I
Yes.
actually this is so funny and random, but I actually perform with an improv comedy group.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, so
That is awesome. That
alter
is awesome.
ego, not so serious, getting very weird and silly. But I actually find that it allows me to have more spontaneity, more ability to let go, more ability to just be fully present with my clients. So there's a silver lining there too.
Yes, that is really great. I think just on my last podcast, I was actually talking about that, finding the humor in life, being able to just, be light and free and just enjoy, laugh, and let let the seriousness go because we often we have to be able to stay in routine and be focused and work, all those things that come with surviving and getting through your day to day. But having, like you said, that alter ego, that other side of like, I'm still human and I want to enjoy life. I want to, live. I want to laugh. I want to find those quirky things that still make me uniquely me. And I really think that's awesome.
In the end, it all kind of weaves together because ultimately, what I have found in all of this healing work, whether it is meditation or hypnosis or the shamanic journey work that I do with people, what I see over and over is that being able to really, rest in and enjoy supportive, positive, empowering, loving mind state,
Hmm.
it's a game changer, and laughter and connection to other people is part of that too. There's something very inherently healing, and it does shift brain chemistry. I would
Yeah.
love to put a bunch of improvisers in a EEG or, MRI machine and see what's
Uh-huh.
actually happening there when we're playing. Because part of it too is in order to feel creative and playful and expansive in our healing or in our day-to-day life, we have to feel safe. And
Yes.
so, part of this too is about cultivating a sense of safety.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Yes. For anyone listening who's thinking, okay, I want to start shifting my consciousness, but where do I even begin? What's one simple practice they can try today?
That's a great question. I would say oh gosh, there are so many options. I almost don't know which to say. But I would say a great place to start is actually, some of the different meditation practices that evoke loving qualities. There's one practice in Buddhism called metta practice. Metta translates to loving kindness. And it's actually, a way of cultivating a sense of friendliness, a sense of care, a sense of benevolence. And, that is one way to very quickly shift your state. Sometimes it can feel a little clunky at first, but it's a
Hmm.
really good entry level practice, especially if you're not quite in a place ready to work one on one with somebody who can support you in a hypnotherapeutic way or a coaching way to go even deeper. I think that's a really, really wonderful entry point. And there's a lot of meditations online. And I have one up on my website in the meditation section too that shares a little bit more of those practices. And they can be just incredibly supportive.
That is great. I will be sure to link your website down in the show notes for anyone that would like to reach out and connect with you. This was so great. Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so lovely to get to connect and spend time together.
Yes, this was really great. I want to see you work with so many people one on one. And from your perspective, what themes or patterns do you see emerging collectively right now?
It's a great question. I think that part of what's emerging collectively right now is this understanding that even though things in the world can look really bleak, that we're all in it together. And that part of the way that we show up for each other is by doing our own healing work and by being able to go into, our workplaces and our communities and the places that we volunteer in a way that's more embodied, more kind, more compassionate, more able to listen without reacting. I actually work with a lot of nonprofit leaders who are in really intense jobs. And one of the things that they reflect back to me a lot, especially over this last year, is the way that some of this inner work, it just ripples outwards. They're showing up more like the person that they wanna be in their own
Yes.
workplace.
Oh, wow. Thank you. This has been really good. This has been powerful, actually. Great. I want to ask one last questions for my guests. If someone is standing at the edge of their healing journey, like you said, they're in that place of they've done therapy, they've done meditation, and they're scared, they're unsure, and maybe in that dark space, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that so much. more is possible. That there is so much freedom and so much love and so much creativity that when we learn to just get out of our own way a little bit, that it is available and that, support to discover that is out there.
Yes. Yes, thank you. That was really great. The resources are there, and I know I've probably said this before, but it's just all about being intentional and getting out there and finding the help that you're seeking. And once you start seeking, you'll be surprised what makes itself available for you. Just put it make your mind up and set your mind to it, and it aligns itself up. You said that earlier, just been in a place of alignment, allowing things to flow, and it's such a beautiful experience. Thank you so much, Juliana. This was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your heart today. For anyone who wants to work with Juliana, or explore your offerings, can you share your website with us one more time? And like I said, I will
Yeah,
also link it.
absolutely. It's pretty simple. It's julianasloan.com, which is JulianaSloane.com.
Great. And to my But I Did It family, thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing growth. And thank you for showing up for yourselves. Until next time, keep going, keep healing, and keep trusting your inner wisdom. Bye.